So like any migration, it shows you some flaws in your information architecture. That's normal, but this is the time to sort of right size things. So if you've got a lot of stuff stored in a channel that really should be in 3 or 4 different places, do that now. Don't lift it up and move it into one place and then fix it later, because we never fix it later. Thanks for joining us today for Asked in Practice. Today we're going to talk about migrating from Stream Classic to Stream in SharePoint. Got our boxes all packed. We're ready to go. We've got all those cool stickers.
You can tell that Emily didn't judge this week.
Yes. No. This is my own judging.
But that,
look at that, huh?
Good. I like that. That's good. You get style points for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll reserve judgment.
The pack of stickers came in all different sizes, so I figured I'd use them all.
Take the yoga mat with you. That's
so it's half the Slim Praxis team today. Clearly, I'm here, Julie's here, and Todd is here. The other three,
and my beard is here.
Out of the office. Yeah,
my
separate square for Todd's beard.
It's the newest employee of Slim Praxis.
Long may it wave. So we're going to talk about a few things about this concept of migrating from Stream Classic into Stream in SharePoint. The first being, well, why would you even do this? What some common scenarios might be, some things that we've run into as we've done this with clients that are worth thinking about. How does it work? How do you actually make this thing happen? And then based on some of our experience with it, what are some caveats and tips that we've learned that might help you? So first of all, and some of this is directly from the Stream documentation, which I've got to say is actually quite good. So I don't get to say that about everything that Microsoft puts out there and documents, but I found that the documentation for this whole process is quite good. The explanation of why, the benefits you get, the things that you give up, all of that is really well documented. So the point here is that Stream Classic and before it Office 365 Video were really separate destinations. You had to either go to that video place or embed those videos into pages somewhere in SharePoint generally, or maybe a Teams tab in order to expose it to people. And what they've realized is that videos are just like documents. They're objects that people need to interact with, usually in the case of a video, to watch, just like you would read a Word document. So rather than having a separate destination for them, they now will live in document libraries in SharePoint, just like any other sort of document. So from a separate place to a same place. And these videos really then become what I think of as first-class files in SharePoint or OneDrive, I guess I should say. You can certainly store them in OneDrive. They're just files, MP4s or OGG, VOB, whatever that name is, and all of OGG, VOG, Orbis, yeah, all of that sort of conversion stuff, which those weird file names indicate, happen for us in the viewer as opposed to sort of ahead of time, because the files are stored in a separate place.
Yeah, this was so as an admin, this was one of the things that I really got excited about this, because forever people have been trying to wedge video into SharePoint. And this is something, whether it deserved to be there or not, it's a completely different issue. But it was always this weird thing, like you could store them there, but you couldn't view them. And then there's these crazy web parts. And so when this first came out, I was really amazed. I was amazed that it took Microsoft this long. But I think this is also great because, like you said, Mark, these videos are now regular documents to our clients. And so being able to do stuff like retention and all that, this is a big deal. I was really excited when I first saw this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. We don't say that about everything Microsoft does, do we? So what are some common scenarios? I think most people, in my experience, are using channels in Stream Classic. They may be using Stream groups. They may be storing personal videos in Stream Classic. And each of those sort of containers there's a tool that helps you do this migration. And each of those containers migrates into a single location, the single document library in SharePoint. If your use of Stream Classic is relatively straightforward, that's going to cover you. You're just going to be able to sort of lift up each channel or each group or whatever and put it into a single document library in SharePoint. But at the same time, just like any other migration, you want to think about, well, what do we want to take across? Just because it's, whenever we at SimPraxis hear the word migration, we think, well, don't just lift up all of your crap and move it over here. Take the time and maybe delete some things that you don't need. You may have some old, company meetings sitting out there that are 3 or 4 years old that really don't serve any purposes, stuff like that. So you might want to do a good cleanup before you start this migration process. If you are like most people, your information architecture has either served you well or not, and often it's not, and usually it's because things have evolved. And you'll find that sometimes what you have grouped together in a channel or in a stream group in Stream Classic really isn't one set of things. Those videos might need to go to multiple locations because you've just sort of used that channel as a grab bag or a dumping ground. We've certainly seen a few instances of that. So like any migration, it shows you some flaws in your information architecture. That's normal. But this is the time to sort of right-size things. So if you've got a lot of stuff stored in a channel that really should be in 3 or 4 different places, do that now. Don't lift it up and move it into one place and then fix it later, because we never fix it later.
Yeah, and isn't there, I don't want to steal your thunder later, but isn't there some stuff that will break if you move the videos afterwards?
There is, B. Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit. So the migration tool sort of handles the most common scenario where you're taking a channel or any one of those containers and moving it to one place quite well. It's where you want to do some little bit more remedial work that it's going to take a little extra effort on your part. So how does all this work? This is a lot of bullets. All of this is documented in those stream migration documents that are in the resources section at the end. But this is the sequence that I found is the best way to go. First of all, there's a migration report that you can run with ShareGate. Well, you can always do things with ShareGate. ShareGate is awesome, but you would run this migration report with PowerShell. And what it does is it takes an inventory of all your current videos in Stream Classic and outputs it to a CSV file. And then the other cool thing that you can do with that CSV file is there's a Power BI template that you can connect to that CSV file as a data source, and it shows you a whole bunch of information about what your corpus of videos look like and where the potential issues are. And I'll show you a screenshot of one of those. So then, sort of based on that migration report, that full inventory, it's time to do some cleanup. That's going to point out some videos that you realize, oh, this thing's 5 years old, or this is, we migrated this from Office 365 video forever ago. So do some cleanup. It's not that you can't move everything. I think that the storage quota for Stream Classic is a little bit different than the storage quota for SharePoint, but why bother if you don't need it? As you're just going to watch that little spinner go longer while you're doing the migrations than you need to. Next up is to decide on a migration strategy. And there's a really good article, that's actually a link if you want to check it out, that outlines several different migration strategies that the Stream team recommends. And I think that they're a really good way to think things through. Ideally, your scenario 1 or strategy 1, which is the simple sort of container from here goes into a place over there, but it can get very complicated. If you've been using video a lot, if you're a very large organization, if you want to segment your users and move some things at one point and some things at another point. And those migration strategies help a lot thinking that through. You do want to work with your global admins to plan this, because the stream icon, or the icon that's in the behind the waffle, points to Stream Classic if you haven't done this yet, and you're going to want to point it to the office.com stream or video page when you're done with this. So there are some things that your global admins are going to have to do for you. So you want to make sure that you include them in these conversations. So now once you get started, what you're going to do is you're going to set Stream Classic to read only. Obviously, you don't want people uploading stuff if you're just going to have to move it. You do the migration. That's a nice little short bullet, but that's where I think we spent most of our time in the ones that I've done. Though sort of analyzing that inventory takes some time as well. You need to optionally change the Stream Classic web parts. I'll talk a little bit more about that. You disable Stream Classic fully. You change that stream icon destination, and then you archive Stream Classic if you choose to. Those videos are still sitting out there as a Stream Classic admin. You can get to them, but you may just want to archive them so you're not using that quota again. Questions about any of that? A whole bunch of words on a slide.
You got a thumbs up. I feel like I should be singing Jeopardy though.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, sing.
I won't subject you all.
So this is that Power BI report, and this is actually from a client instance that I worked on. So you notice that it tells you, how many containers do you have? This one was not that huge. They had 12 containers. They had 112 videos. That was a total of 78 gigabytes. And they had 653 views. This is a relatively small organization, but they actually use video quite a bit. You'll notice in that middle section where the donuts are, there are some videos that are termed as not eligible for moving. I haven't figured out what that means. There are a couple places where that inventory gives an error, and the migration tool gives me an error, but it doesn't tell me why. The videos look totally fine, and I can download them and do something with them. So I think there's probably just sort of an automation problem there. Hopefully that slice of your donut is either non-existent or very small, and you can work around it. But that's a pretty nice thing to be able to, and this is just one screenshot from a whole set of reports that Power BI generates from that CSV file. And it can really help with the conversation about, how big is this little project? How should we think about it? How do we inform people about what's going on? How do we tell management what the scale of the thing is?
Hey, Mark, we have a question in the chat. Deb Herndon asked if it looks like my company's global admin already switched to office.com stream. Any issues with that in terms of migrating the migration process? Excuse me.
No, there shouldn't be. I mean, the only downside to that is people then aren't seeing Stream Classic anymore unless they go directly to that URL. Obviously, that icon is just sort of a shortcut. So they probably did that a little prematurely, but no, it's not going to hurt anything about the migration. And that, by the way, that office.com page does not show you all the videos. This is not a video center anymore. It shows you the videos that you've most recently interacted with, much like any other document that you would see on office.com. Hopefully that answered your question. Okay, so how do we do this migration? It's one of the migration tools. We use one of the migration tools that's actually in the SharePoint Admin Center. So you do need to be a SharePoint admin to do this. You also need to be a stream admin to really take the steps here. So we go to that migration center, and you can see that there's a stream preview migration tool there, and it looks something like this. And I took these screenshots straight from their articles, of course. So I'm not going to go into all the minutia of it, but I will talk about a few things that I saw along the way that I think might be confusing to you. The main one being, you notice right up underneath Stream Migration Preview, it says Scans and Migrations. I couldn't find that Migrations tab for a good 30 minutes. They said, now go to the migrations, and it's up there above the words, and I couldn't figure out where it was, and that really frustrated me. So I thought I'd point it out. So what happens the first time that you come here is that and I think there's a button you push that basically says, go and find me all the containers. And you notice that on the sort of toolbar level there's a little circle spinning that says discovering containers. So it reaches out into Stream Classic, it finds all the containers and sort of tells you what's there. So if you've if you've done that report, this isn't going to be a big surprise to you. But if you come here first, you're going to get a good view of what all the containers are right here. This scanning can take, you know, a couple of seconds. It can take maybe an hour, depending on how many videos that you've got out there. You know, obviously larger takes longer, but you can walk away, have some lunch, come back.
Krista has a question.
Yes, Kristen.
Yeah, Mark, just a question.
Krista.
You mentioned you mentioned that you need to be a SharePoint admin and a stream admin. So if you aren't a stream admin, will you actually see these containers in this scanning process?
That's a good question. I'm just going to look. So I think that the main reason I decided I needed to be a stream admin was to go and get that script to run the report. You download it from the stream admin UI.
Okay.
So you definitely need it for that. Of course, then you have a PowerShell module, a PowerShell script that you then have to run. So you might have to go to your friendly PowerShell person anyway. I'm not sure that you would need to be a stream admin for this step or not, but because I had gone, I want to run that report, I go to the stream classic admin center, get that script, and then go from there. So I already was one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. If you don't see any containers, that's the reason. So we scan for the containers, and you can see it shows you all of the containers, and there may be different kinds of containers. So you see here there are 5 containers. Sorry, this is adding the containers to the migrations. So basically here you can highlight one or more of the containers and say, I want to put them into a migration together. So this is the instance where you want to take 5 of those containers and merge them into one location. That works well. There isn't a split into multiple locations. So I can't, you know, highlight Contoso HR and say move half of these to HR and half to benefits, because there's no sort of split mechanism. It's on their roadmap to do that, but I have some tips about how you can get around it in the meantime. So notice that there are different types of containers, and these are the different types that you might run into. I don't know how many organizations would be using all of them. I think the most common are the company-wide channel and maybe some user, and I think it now says user content instead of just user. But you might have some stream groups. You might have some Microsoft 365 groups that have videos. And so basically between the name of the thing and the type of container, you're going to figure out, well, where should this thing go? And the other stats you get on that page are sort of, you know, how big is it? How many videos there are? You can come back and rescan as many times as you want. You just highlight all of the containers that you want and ask the tool to rescan. So you can plan, in other words, you can continue your planning for weeks or months on end. So the next thing you do is you go to that migrations tab that I couldn't find, and sorry, let me take a step back. We've highlighted some containers, we've added them to a migration, and then we come to this next view, the migrations view, and we say, okay, for this migration, and you get a bunch of stats, you can see, where do I want the stuff in this migration to go? And this is where you specify a document library for the content to leave. And then as you're doing the migration, you get some stats along the way, and you can see you know, sort of what happened and where things are going. So it's actually a pretty well built tool. It's pretty simple to follow, except finding that migrations tab. And it does, like I said, sort of the common scenario. Any questions about how that looks? I think, again, like the migration for this, or sorry, the documentation for this is quite good. And I think the tool itself is pretty logical. So some caveats. this, like I said, the migration tool isn't great for reorganizing. It's fine if you want to combine things, but it doesn't do any splitting. So I think that the fact that any migration tends to point out the flaws in your information architecture comes to bear here. So it's always one migration goes into one destination. So you can combine but not split. But you could migrate into multiple locations. So say that Contoso HR container had 30 videos in it. Well, you could migrate those 30 into the HR site, go back and change the destination and migrate them into the benefits site, and then just delete the ones that don't belong in each location. That's a little cumbersome, but it works. It just takes a little longer because you're migrating the videos twice, and they might be large. The other option, and I found myself doing this more, was migrating into one location. So let's migrate everything from Contoso HR into the HR videos library. And then you can just use the move to on the toolbar to move those videos from the place where you've migrated them into wherever you want. So that's one of the benefits of them being just regular files. They have they end up as documents. The content type is actually document in a document library, but they have this sort of wrapper around them because they're videos. They've got some metadata. If there's a transcript, it's there with the video. If you've set up chapters, for example, they're there with the video. But when you do a move to, all that stuff seems to go along with the video as an object. I haven't found anything that didn't move. And that makes sense because we're treating them just like regular files. I mentioned that some videos may give some errors. I still haven't figured out why those errors occurred. There's really nothing in the tool that explains what those errors are what are causing those errors. But like I said, the videos that did throw those errors for me were always something I could download and then upload into the right place. Not necessarily a great answer. Hopefully you don't have a lot of them, and that is a good workaround. Steve's asking, are there video content types to be aware of? When I first started hearing about Stream in SharePoint, I thought, awesome, I'm going to go create a new, I'm going to go inherit from that new kind of content type and start creating my information architecture. And I reached out to Mark Mraz on Twitter because, Twitter is where everything happens. And asked him about it, and he said, no, you just use a document, a content type. And so, if that in itself sort of bothers me, and I'll say why. But what it does mean is that you can use any metadata that you want. You can decide that your videos have 12 different metadata fields, have 2 metadata fields, have no metadata fields, and you can treat them like other content from that perspective. The downside of using document as the default is that obviously you can't distinguish between a video and a Word document by the content type itself. So I think probably using a content type that you set up for your own organization and inherit from document would be a good idea. Don't call it video, but call it something about what it is, and then you'll have a better information architecture to work with going forward. The metadata is, as Julie said, in the library where the video lives. I think things like transcript don't show that, they're not sort of there in the document library from a sense that you can't see it separate from the video. So I think it's probably wrapped in the video file or potentially stored somewhere else and linked to. But I think that you can consider it as being part of that file.
There's another question about, does the URL redirect always work? Always with move to previous classic URL, which redirects in SharePoint Stream.
I thought I had that on the caveat. I skipped this slide. Oops.
Yeah, so that was the piece I was. Whoa, yeah. You kept mentioning moving them. I'm like, but there's this caveat.
Maybe I skipped it. Maybe I skipped it subconsciously because I never finished typing that first bullet. So when you.
Where is Emily?
Why? Yeah. So second bullet. So when you do that migration, anything that's part of that migration goes into a folder called Stream Migrated Videos with the name of the container, the original container. And that's all well and good, but Stream Migrated Videos just doesn't seem like a folder name that I want to keep for a really long time. So I'm probably going to move my videos from that folder or from the folders under that folder to the place that I actually want them. That's where the redirect stops working. The redirect from the old Stream Classic URL will redirect to where that video is inside that Stream Migrated Videos folder. So that's pretty cool. If you just move things and you don't mess with the locations that they've landed, all the redirects will work. I just don't like those folders because they're vestigial. They make no sense. What's the point of separating the ones that you've migrated from the ones that you're now uploading? So if you move them around, then you need to think about the redirects. If you do a move to, obviously the file's not where it was before, so the redirect is not going to work. The redirect is only there for the move using the migration tool. So knowing where the videos from Stream Classic are displayed could be problematic, right? You've got web parts and pages. You may, you might be using a highlighted content web part, for example. You can't easily figure out where is that Stream Classic web part in use. So of course, there's some PowerShell for that, which I wrote and I have in the resources. Todd's convinced me that PowerShell is the best thing to do for pretty much everything. I just get excited anytime anybody says PowerShell. I see my kid, I write PowerShell, whatever. Not all metadata migrates, but most does. And they've got a really clear document that says exactly what migrates and what doesn't. If you're a sort of a normal's not the right term. If you're just sort of a regular Stream Classic user, I think you're going to be more than satisfied with what migrates and what doesn't. But they get really, really specific about what does and what doesn't in that document. And again, there's a link in the resources for that.
Russell has a question. If he sets up a content type for a video, how do I get the migration tool to use that content type? I suspect you're going to say you can't, and you'd have to change it, right?
Right. It's all about where you're migrating into, right? So if you can create a document library for the destination in the migration tool, and it will just be an empty, normal, flat, regular document enabled only document library. But you can also pre-build your document libraries, enable content types to be, a video oriented content type to be the default, and then as those files land in there, they will become that content type.
Right, because it'll pick up the default. So whatever the default content type is the one.
Right, you're just sort of pouring content into that container, and it assumes the aspects of that container as you've set them. The other option, obviously, is to sort of fix it up after the fact. You could let the migration tool create the document library and then go back and sort of retrofit your information architecture as needed. Either way works. Not one isn't going to be better than the other. It's just when you decide you want to do it. If you want a video center, we don't, like I said, the office.com video page is not the same thing as the Stream Classic homepage. It's not a place you go for videos. But if you wanted to build yourself either a small or large video center, you can do that because it's just content, right? You could use a document library web part inside a single, if your video's in a single document library, and stick that in a page. You could use the highlighted content web part to pull videos from across different containers, sites, document libraries, whatever. You could use PNP Modern Search to pull videos from across the entire tenant. In fact, you could use the highlighted content web part to you could set your scope there for across the whole tenant as well. I would say, there was an interesting stat that Mark posted about, how many people were going to Stream Classic to consume videos versus consuming them, where they've been embedded in pages and sites. I don't remember the percentage, but it was something like in the 90s percent of the people were consuming 90-some% of the consumption of videos was actually in the places where they were embedded, not in Stream Classic. It was a big percentage. So don't sort of run out and build a new video center just because you used to have one. People may or may not really be using it. And then if you want to search for a video, just the sort of normal Microsoft search has that Files tab. And one of the little filters you get across the top there is the file type, and video is one of the file types, and that works really well. And it knows all the video types file types that make up a video. There will be, Daryl, you're right. There will be a video sort of a site template for videos that's coming from Microsoft. I'm not sure that we'll need it as much as some people think, but it will be there. I wanted to show you this just because I thought it was horrible. This is the filter that actually goes to the server when you filter for this video. So they haven't really thought this through very well, because it's sort of, here's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't want. It just shows sometimes the architecture under the covers is not necessarily as good as it could be. So here's some resources. Like I said, the documentation is really good. I would encourage you to probably read it the way I've got it laid out here, which is not the way their table of contents works. Not necessarily the way you'll want it, but I found that as I was adding these things, I sort of ordered them in a way that made sense to me, except for that last bullet, which is actually that would probably be where I would do it too. That last bullet is a link to my blog post that has that PowerShell that will help you find all of the Stream Classic web parts to check and see if the right videos are showing where those web parts are. If you've got lots of them, that's not going to be a very pleasant process, but if you decide you want to move your videos around once they get into SharePoint, you're likely going to want to check a lot of your Stream Classic web parts. I'm over time. Let me see what to think of.
So let's do the final wrap-up page.
Yep. I think we're going to have to cut it off. Hilde, I will read your question and answer in the chat. Next week, in 2 weeks, we'll be talking about business cases for Viva Connections. And if you want to see us live coming up, actually, the Sympraxis folks won't be going to conferences for quite some time, but we will be at European Collaboration Summit in Dusseldorf in May, and then 365 EduCon DC in June in DC, of course. And you can always see Julie along with Andrew Connell on their Cloud Dev Clarity podcast. Don't miss that. Thanks for joining us. If you have questions, I'll watch the chat for a little bit, and feel free to get in touch.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Sympraxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues. Join us again as we release new content every other Wednesday.